We're going to go ahead and get started. And those of you who want to grab a seat, feel free to do so. Good morning. We know everyone has a busy day, and we want to go ahead and honor your time. But we also want to thank you for joining us this morning for what is the third installment of our economic recovery strategy and priorities for the city of Denver. Let me first start off by thanking a dear friend, Brad Muley, here at the Denver Rescue Mission, who has been a phenomenal partner of the city and county of Denver, along with other partners who are here and been tremendous partners as well. Of course, Mike Sinnett of Catholic Charities and Kathy Alderman of the Colorado Coalition for Homeless. As we proved during the pandemic, we have a tremendous leader as our chief housing officer who thinks outside the box and is focused really mostly on the human beings that we are charged to serve. And so I want to thank Britta Fisher for her leadership and the entire housing stability team for the city and county of Denver. Thank you. What we also proved during the pandemic is that 24-hour shelter works. And that's exactly what we are going to continue to do here in this facility that we are opening today. I want to acknowledge all our partners who are here with us today, partners who are helping us make episodes of homeless rare, brief, and one time. Addressing homelessness is one of the top 3 priorities of my administration as we recover from the pandemic, along with reducing crime and strengthening our economy. Our economic recovery, local businesses are getting back to normal. Venues and events are back at full capacity. And in the coming weeks, I will be submitting a bond package to City Council to drive even more sustainable and equitable economic recovery. On public safety, last week in Southwest Denver, the police department and other city agencies partnered with community organizations to kick off our new collaborative crime prevention initiative. And today, we are here to focus on homelessness. Without question, the pandemic has significantly worsened the situation in Denver and in cities across the country. I speak with mayors on a daily basis. I say this all the time, but it's important to keep the pulse of the city by talking to the local leaders in cities around the country. And the leaders, the mayors, it's interesting, we are all talking about the exact same thing: homelessness, gun violence, and economic recovery. And while this new facility and the additional steps we will be discussing today demonstrate forward progress, this is not something that we can solve on our own. We need stronger and more meaningful involvement from our federal, state, and regional partners. In March and April of last year, while services across the region were shutting down, Denver stayed open to support those experiencing homelessness and those at risk of losing their homes. We mobilized nearly 1,000 hotel and motel rooms, stood up 2 24-hour shelters in just a matter of days, and deployed millions of dollars in federal aid to help people with rent and utility payments. Even more than we were before the pandemic, we became the central and sometimes the only support system for these residents. But it also gave us an opportunity to showcase the overwhelming benefits of 24-hour shelters and to rethink the option of safe outdoor spaces. And there is more to come. Britta Fisher will talk in greater detail, but we will be taking additional steps over the coming weeks and months to advance our recovery efforts. First, we plan to acquire and rehabilitate hotel and motels to help people stabilize, to help them exit homelessness, and to help them enter housing. These acquisitions will deliver options for people in need much quicker than the traditional housing development. Second, We will be expanding innovative solutions such as safe outdoor spaces for those who are living out on our streets, solutions that will provide basic amenities, sanitation, rehousing support, and other services that are not just about an exit, that are existing in unmanaged campsites, encampments around the city, and who need shelter. Third, we will leverage existing partnerships with key organizations like Denver Housing Authority to more quickly connect our unhoused residents to available apartments through a surge voucher system, through a surge in our voucher system. Next, we will be expanding supportive programs that proved to be invaluable during the pandemic, such as rental assistance, utility assistance, and eviction protection services. And finally, we will be growing out the pipeline of new housing developments and the preservation of existing homes to support people across a wide range of income levels. This will not only create new affordable housing, but it would also create new jobs. The aim of all of these steps in our entire strategy is to help as many of our unhoused residents as possible to enter housing and stay housed. When homelessness occurs, we should do everything in our power as a society, not just as a government, but as a society to make it brief and one time. House keys have more power to change a life than a tent. And even those house keys are much less visible than tents, we must never stop trying to solve this problem through house keys. Most of our neighbors experiencing homelessness are not sheltered. Every night, let me try that one more time. Screw that line up. Most of the people experiencing homelessness are sheltered. And every night, our entire system has beds available for folks who are ready to come in off the street. So I want to be very clear. Unsanctioned encampments are not an option. While we must show compassion to our unhoused neighbors and provide them with dignified options, I stand here today to confirm my support for the city's unauthorized camping ordinance. And we will soon be deploying a civilian enforcement team to support our efforts to end unsanctioned encampments and to connect our residents experiencing homelessness with services. And I will reiterate, homelessness is not just Denver's challenge or Denver's burden to shoulder alone. We must never stop working on a regional basis, on a statewide basis, to make a difference. The metro area came together in March to begin addressing veteran homelessness as a region, and this is a great first step for all of us. I'm also encouraged that Governor Polis and the legislature recognize the many risks that homelessness poses to our entire state. And it's my hope that the Biden administration will join with us to craft a unifying national strategy as well. But I want to be clear, and I want to celebrate mayors across this country who have rolled up their sleeves, who have pulled together teams of thought partners to help try to figure out this very complex, challenging problem that cities are facing all over this country. It's been the mayors who have pushed this agenda. It's been the mayors who said we cannot have the inhumanity of unsanctioned campsites existing in our cities, that we must find a more decent and better way to serve those who are unsheltered in our cities. And with that, I want to turn it over to our Chief Housing Officer, Britta Fisher, for more on our plans here in the city of Denver. Britta?
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor. While it's been a year since the start of the pandemic, we are still in the midst of our COVID response, as this shelter clearly demonstrates. Our city team, including our Department of Housing Stability, has made significant efforts to meet the needs of our neighbors who have lost jobs and struggled to pay their bills, resulting in housing instability and, in some cases, homelessness. Despite initially having to cut the number of shelter beds in nearly half for social distancing, today the city's network of shelters serves more than 2,200 people nightly. a more than 54% increase from last March to March 2021. That is a significant increase in just 1 year. In the first year of the pandemic, 12,524 unique households were served with shelter or services. More than 8,200 used our day shelters. More than 7,700 used overnight and 24-hour congregate shelter services like this facility. And more than 3,000 stayed in emergency shelter programs at hotels and motels. We served 2,500 households with rent and utility assistance to help people stay in their homes and avoid homelessness. And more than 1,800 households were supported in our housing programs to help people get back on their feet. Thank you to the many partners who made that reality. Despite all of these efforts and the many people who have been working to serve people every day, we are in the midst of a housing crisis that has been exacerbated by a pandemic. We are seeing more people experiencing homelessness than ever because more people are experiencing a crisis that results in losing their home. When many places closed, our shelter and service partners rallied to serve more people and transform our system from one that was largely designed for shelter from crisis overnight to a residential shelter system that is open 24/7 to serve people in crisis and help them reconnect to housing. We needed additional partnership to meet these needs. The city of Denver was one of only a handful of cities in this country that boldly and successfully applied for and received FEMA funds to support emergency sheltering. Those funds enabled us to be creative as we learned more about the virus and met our emergency needs. We have learned a lot from innovations that arose from this crisis. We learned that opening shelters 24/7 made it so that people didn't have to stand in line outside. It allowed them to stay and rest and gave them a safe space to keep their things during the day instead of having to take everything with them. Our guests have reported that they feel better rested and less anxious. Opening 24/7 helped us ensure that people could access 3 meals a day and have on-site case management to help connect them to services and get rehoused more quickly. This shelter right here offers laundry facilities, and in a future phase, we'll have a kennel so that pets can be kept with their people in crisis. Importantly, we have plans for on-site integrated healthcare facilities to help people address mental and physical health needs. These are some of the innovations that came from this pandemic. Having healthcare on site, having medical screening to assist people, and knowing that when people are better fed, better rested, and less anxious, they're ready to connect with housing. Our COVID response has confirmed that the shelter people seek is shelter that feels the most like housing. So when we offered people hotels and motels, we increased the number of people willing to come in off the streets. In particular, when we offered women the type of shelter that felt safe to them, we nearly tripled the number of women we have sheltered here in Denver. And we learned about harm reduction strategies, as the mayor spoke, like temporary managed campsites or safe outdoor spaces that allow us to reach people who otherwise won't seek out shelter, who otherwise won't access case managers or services, and who otherwise won't have access to food or toilets. By providing this type of alternative to shelter, we can successfully move more people off our streets and towards stability. And yet, given everything we have done and what we have learned, we are still seeing demand like never before. We see the tents and the tarps, we see the people living outside in our rights of way, and we work together to address the encampments and the people living here in Denver unsheltered. We know that shelter is not a permanent solution. We need housing so people have somewhere they can restart and recover. The need for affordable housing is clear. The support from our community is clear, and housing is the solution. Housing is how we will recover. In fact, for our economic recovery, for every housing unit that is rehabbed or built, 2 jobs are created in our community. The solution to homelessness is housing, and we're pulling every lever possible to meet the needs of our community. We learned many lessons throughout this pandemic, and we're building on those lessons in our efforts now, thanks to greater local and federal funds. A stable home is the foundation from which members of our community are better able to meet their own needs. Whether that's finding a new or better paying job, reconnecting with family, or engaging in behavioral health treatment. This pandemic has demonstrated that our homes are foundational to our health. With our thanks to Denver voters for the passage of 2B, in the first 6 months of the new Homelessness Resolution Fund, we are supporting 440 beds as 24/7 shelter in Denver today. We are rehousing 220 households in rapid rehousing and supportive housing programs, and creating more than 160 supportive housing units with support services. These are the types of solutions that we need, and we're so grateful to our voters for entrusting these funds to us to deliver for our community. As we transition from the rescue effort to the recovery, we will continue to make progress on our efforts to meet the current needs of people experiencing homelessness and housing instability. We look forward to the bold steps the City of Denver must take to ensure an equitable recovery that puts those with the greatest needs at the forefront of our investment strategy. Our Department of Finance in the City of Denver recently did an extensive community engagement, and they found, unsurprisingly, that housing and homelessness were expressed as the critical investment and a top priority in our recovery. We're incredibly excited about the bold steps that our mayor just laid out that we can take to support an equitable recovery. And we look forward to additional recovery funding so that we can continue to be responsive to these and other identified community needs. So now let's turn to this facility and celebrate today. In addition to the hundreds of men this shelter will serve each night, the opening of this location enables us to convert the former men's shelter just down the street at 4330 East 48th Avenue to the largest women's shelter in Denver's history. That facility has the capacity to sleep up to 500 women and transgender guests. Operated by our fabulous partners at Catholic Charities, and thanks to Mike on this side of me, Mike Sinnott, Orlando Padilla, and the whole Catholic Charities team that is doing yeoman's work today. We just thank our partners that we can now have this open as well. So besides having opened this facility on Thursday of last week, we are today also welcoming guests just down the street into a new women's shelter. The city's congregate shelters for women are typically at about 88% utilization, and as COVID restrictions begin to lift, and as our emergency and hotel and motel rooms begin to close, it is even more important that we have this capacity for women. So thank you to the many people experiencing homelessness who have given us input and lent their expertise to shape our response and recovery. We also want to thank our partners at Denver Rescue Mission, at the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, thank you, Kathy, and to the whole, to Catholic Charities, and to all of our service and shelter partners who are helping us in this sustainable model as we recover from the pandemic. We also want to thank the Homeless Leadership Council for their input, support, and hard work, and we especially want to thank the shelter workers who have shown up throughout this response. Thank you. One of the more surreal things in my career has been working side by side with the National Guard, who came alongside our regular shelter workers, and it was amazing to watch how impressed our National Guard was by our current shelter workers and how impressed our shelter workers were by our National Guard, who all came together to serve one another. We are also greatly appreciative to have the resources and partnerships to make this facility possible. It is much easier to solve problems with resources and partnerships than without. And the federal emergency funds in partnership with the Department of Finance, the support from the state of Colorado with Emergency Solutions Grant, coronavirus funds in this facility, and a huge thanks again to our voters approving Measure 2B. To create the Homelessness Resolution Fund and expand our dedicated resources for people experiencing homelessness. We also want to acknowledge DCB, the project manager and general contractor that turned this gigantic facility into a place that could serve our unhoused neighbors. And to the Denver facilities team, I've seen some of them here today, which provided couches and tables, and they do so much for our facilities and for our whole team behind the scenes. I have worked in community service throughout my career, and I'm a newer person to local government service, and I have come to appreciate the many skills and talents of my many colleagues in this big city team who make something like this possible. So I want to give a quick shout out to Mike Young, Lisa Lumley, Jared Powell, Angie Nelson, as well as Scott, Dave, Jillian, Tina, Chris, Laura, Amy, Sky, Kevin, Maureen, Corey, Carly, Margaret, Rory, and Evan. And I say all of that because these are the people across so many agencies that have to come alongside and solve the problems and make the gears go so that we can get something big like this done. So thank you to all the agency partners for that help. I also want to give a shout out to my team at the Department of Housing Stability, who's been working on so many things in this pandemic and in this response, and doing it so well with care for our neighbors. I also want to thank the area businesses that are working with us to ensure that we can be good neighbors here. I want to thank Councilmember Chris Herndon from this district and the whole City Council for their support of the long-term lease and many contracts to serve people in our emergency response. And my deepest thanks to our mayor for his vision to create a department to ensure that Denver is healthy, housed, and connected, and for his leadership prioritizing people with the fewest resources in our rescue response as well as our recovery. So with that, I now want to turn this over to our partner here at Denver Rescue Mission. They are already operating this facility. They know the ins and outs and what's working so well already. So with that, I want to introduce the President and CEO, Brad Miley.
I just want to say thank you to Mayor Hancock, Britta Fisher, the host team, and our fellow service providers. So, the Denver Rescue Mission belongs to an organization, a national organization, has about 300 rescue missions across the country. And as I talk to other CEOs, I just want to let you know that what goes on here in Denver with the collaboration of the city, with service providers, with the business community is really just unprecedented. This really just does not happen anywhere else but Denver, Colorado. And so, Mayor, I just want to applaud you again for this. About 3 years ago, we opened up another shelter. We call it the Holly Center. And the mayor came to that and he said something that I've had a long time to think about. He said, we're congratulating one another for opening this and we're excited about it, but we wish that we didn't have to have this. And so, and Mayor, I just want you to know that I feel the same way, that we wish that we didn't have to open a facility. But at the same time, I know the mayor feels this way too, that we're so excited that we are able to provide this. And so over the years, we've worked alongside the city of Denver to help our neighbors in need in a variety of ways. Under Mayor Hancock's leadership, we started running winter overflow shelters about 10 years ago inside of rec centers and other spaces. Today, we're in this remodeled building with enough space for 600 men. When the pandemic hit last year, we fast-tracked to 24/7 sheltering. I don't know if you know this, but we were supposed to try, the city had decided to do 24/7 and have it happen over a 3-year period. And we had to do that in about 30 to 60 days. Now our guests are getting more sleep. They're showing up for necessary appointments. They're connecting with case management. They're accessing health care and transitioning out of homelessness. Shelters truly save lives. Men like Jim, who had both his feet amputated due to frostbite and joined our New Life program to get sober. And Donald, who was attacked in an encampment and sought shelter at 48th while recovering. Even more so, though, I would like to thank our frontline staff, who are the heart of this facility, the ones who work day in and day out with our guests. They've headed straight into the fire to put the lives of our guests first, time and time again. They have said to our guests, "You're worth it. You're worth it." We're honored to be running this facility and partnering with the City of Denver. Thank you for your trust and allowing us to partner with you in this great work. We look forward to the future and look forward to continuing to change lives together. Just a little bit about this facility, and I'll be done. The city and county has a 10-year lease on this building with an option to purchase, and Denver Rescue Mission is operating the shelter. We have a potential to sleep as many as 600 guests, though only 450 right now. That's the number that we're using. We'll house men and transgender guests, about 270 of whom are staying up the street at an existing shelter at 4330 East 48th Avenue, which we just talked about. Catholic Charities and Mike Sennett went in there with women inside that facility. This new facility has a lot of amenities that help us encourage people on the streets to come inside. First, 24/7, we said it several times, low barrier entry. Case management, this large dining area where meal service is provided 3 times a day. All new bathroom facilities, bathrooms are incredible, including showers, USB charging stations, and storage at bed locations. A laundry facility for guests, space for future pet kennel area, a volunteer check-in and gathering rooms, and something we're incredibly excited about, a health services area on site. The health clinic is to be operated by the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. And Kathy, we partnered together at the National Western, and we're just very, very excited about being able to work hand in hand with you again. The health services areas on the west side of the building includes 3 private exam rooms with plumbed sinks, and will enable us to provide on-site integrated health care for guests here. And so on behalf of the Denver Rescue Mission, we are just very excited to be able to operate this facility, working very closely with not only Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, but Catholic Charities, Urban Peak, Salvation Army, Volunteers of America. I think all of these service providers coming together have just rallied to, particularly during this pandemic, in a way that has been incredible, and really led by Britta and her host team, and obviously with the leadership of Mayor Hancock. And so let's give everyone a hand.
Thank you, Brad. And I just realized you have the same last name of a high school classmate of mine. It's spelled exactly like he spells his name, but he pronounced it Muley. You pronounce it Miley. And I think I called you Muley earlier when I introduced you, so forgive me, flashbacks. Let me just remind the members of the press and the interested bodies that at 12:30, following this press event, we will have the roundtable for Q&A with regards to announcements that we've made today, not only about this facility, but about the plans that Brett and I have outlined in terms of our strategies around homelessness. And so we invite you to be a part of that. I believe it's virtual, so you should have a Teams link for that. If you need one, see Teresa, and the team will make sure you have what you need to join us and get further into the weeds if you like. Let's open it for question and answer and see if we can do that for you. Yes, sir.
Mayor, am I understanding correctly that with this new civilian response team, the city's large-scale cleanups are going to not only continue but increase in frequency
What's your name? Oh, you're the Conrad. So let me, first of all, there are arguments on both sides of this. And I want to be very clear that I don't arrive at the question and issues around encampments half-heartedly and without having done some homework. So if you haven't visited encampments or the sanctioned safe outdoor sites, I strongly encourage you to do so, because I think it will help you to understand the difference between the two. I've studied encampments all over this country, and I understand the very difficult and challenging situation they present for those who are residents, tenants of those encampments, but also for the general public around those encampments. And so there's no reconciliation in my mind. I find safe, sanctioned encampments that allow for sanitation, allow for connectivity to services, and to make the experience of being unsheltered as brief as possible, as the most humane approach to dealing with our residents who are experiencing homelessness. Now, with this street enforcement team that we're looking to deploy, they, by the way, will be doing not only coming in contact and helping to advance connection to services for those who are unsheltered, who maybe have pinched a tent in the city, but they're going to be helping some other right-of-way enforcements that we'll have throughout the city of Denver. So they're going to have multiple responsibilities while they're on the streets of our city, making sure our bike lanes remain clear, and that people are not riding scooters on the sidewalks and other right-of-way enforcements. It is about making sure that we are enforcing the laws of this city that we have. And we have an unsanctioned or urban camping ban in the city of Denver by law, not only passed by the majority of city council, but reaffirmed by 82% plus of the people of Denver in an election, who said, this is not the value we want to carry forth in our city. We want to do better. We have to do better. And this is what you see we're attempting to do. We have never stopped trying to improve and to bring different diversity type of services to the people of the city. So if you haven't visited those two types of systems, I recommend you do so. I think you will erase the void in your question to understand why are sanctioned encampments more humane, safer, cleaner, and healthier for people who are unsheltered in our city. Over here. We are not doing anything different in terms of our cleanups. We have not ordered for more cleanups in the city of Denver. What we are doing is, post-pandemic, is enforcing the law. And we have more encampments than we've had ever in the city of Denver. And so we have more cleanups that we have to execute in the city of Denver. And so we're trying to get to them in accordance with the rules that we have, or has been laid out by the courts. And so you're going to see us, yes, continue to enforce the laws. You're going to see us get to as many of the encampments as we possibly can, because we find them to be unsafe and unhealthy and unsanitary for the residents and tenants of those encampments, as well as the general public. So are we going to clean them up? Yes. Have we ordered them to step up the number? No. We're going to have more people and more mechanisms to enforce the law in our city.
And Mayor, people are undoubtedly going to say, is this connected to the All-Star?
It is not. Let me be very clear. It's not connected to the All-Star Game. There's not been one new order to step up enforcement. What you see us do, starting actually even before the All-Star Game was awarded to Denver, we knew we had a cleanup effort that we had to undertake following the pandemic, because we had more encampments. You might recall we suspended cleanups during the pandemic. And so we had to start that over as we got into the spring. We knew we had to do that. That has nothing to do with the All-Star Game. Okay? I had a question here.
I was just at the meeting in Center Park where Ms. Fisher noted that there are about enough vouchers for 25% of people who want them. And if what she says is true, that there's more demand than ever, I mean, is now really the time to not take up these cleanups and resume at full capacity?
I think what it's time for us to do is to try to find and continue to create as many alternatives to being on shelter outside in our city. And that's what we're working to do. That's what you're hearing about our efforts here. You wanted to add something to that?
Just to give some context to the question from Kevin, when I was speaking this morning, we were speaking about the National Housing Choice Voucher Program, and the question from people experiencing homelessness was about how do we get more of those resources. And I was saying there are efforts underway federally and nationally to increase those resources. The Biden administration has called for a voucher, a universal voucher, so that everyone who is eligible for a housing voucher would get one. Right now, only 1 in every 4 receives a voucher, which can kind of feel like game show odds. And so this kind of universal voucher could be a game changer. And so just making sure everyone was equipped with the information of what is possible and what kind of advocacy could be done. But again, this reiterates the mayor's point that we need federal partnership. The scale of the crisis that we're seeing not only in Denver, but across our nation requires federal response and a scale of resource that only the federal government can produce. Very proud again of our Denver voters for stepping up and investing here locally, but we need to leverage that with state, regional, and federal partners.
Britta, if everyone gets a voucher, is there enough supply to use them?
The question was, is there enough supply of housing? And with a voucher, it takes advantage of existing housing stock. It takes a current rent and subsidizes that to the point that the person who has that voucher can afford it. So it is one of the best ways to use our existing stock. That said, Denver continues to build and grow. You've seen the cranes, and there is more stock coming. We are also investing robustly in affordable housing, as I mentioned in my remarks.
Yeah, let me do this because I want to make sure Evan Breyer, who is Deputy Chief of Staff and Chief Strategy Officer, and working with me directly on the issue of the encampments, and ask if you have anything to add to what I've shared so far from the podium.
No, I really don't, but, and I'm happy to stick around after if folks have more questions about encampments. I just want to reiterate what the mayor said. There's no increase in encampment cleanups that are planned. Kevin and I talked about this morning. We did take a break on encampment cleanups during the heart of the pandemic from March of last year to about July. And before March, we were doing 2 or 3 a week. After July, we went back to that same cadence of about 2 or 3 a week, and that hasn't changed, and there are no plans for it to change. There's no directive from the mayor to have it change. That's where we are. I think it's important to remember why we are here at this facility today. Britta and her team at Host are working extremely, and all of our partners are working hard every day to provide the kinds of options, better sheltering options, more housing options, so that people are not forced to live out on the street.
Is this strategy working?
This is a difficult time, absolutely. Is it working? Yeah. Are we going to keep working harder? Yes, absolutely.
And I don't know who of you got
Hang on,
on this question.
hang on, Liz, hang on. Let's acknowledge people that haven't had a question yet. We've got about 2 minutes left, so we're gonna take a couple more questions. That's what the 12:30 is for. You can ask all these questions then. Go ahead, Connor.
So safe camping site question. So between the two sites, there's capacity for about 100
Right.
people. And I spoke with Britta like a couple weeks ago, and she was estimating that there could be around 1,500 people living unsheltered across the city. And so my question is, like, how much capacity do you want to build at safe camping sites across the city? Are we talking like 1,000?
Yeah, I don't think there's a magic number. We certainly haven't established one, but I think what you see, hopefully inherent in our efforts, and I will invite Britta to join and add into this if she like, is the diversity of the solutions we're bringing to bear to this issue. Not only the SOS sites, but also the tiny homes, villages that we have been supportive of as well. This shelter network system that is, I think, phenomenally important. The affordable housing, the transitional housing. You know, this is not it wasn't one thing that created this situation for the city of Denver, or cities across this country. And by the way, this didn't just happen because of the pandemic. We know that the pandemic exacerbated the problem, but we recognize that this is a problem that cities have been facing for now, and at this extreme, for now over a decade. And cities are moving in, trying to do everything they can to address it. And there is not, is it working kind of strategy. It's like we are searching on a daily basis in the laboratory looking for best practices all over the country. You know, what's the alternative? And so we're always trying to find different nuggets. In this city, what you find, and we'll be hosting mayors next week to Denver, looking at some of the stuff that we're doing that they're going to work to duplicate, is that the city of Denver has deployed some of the most innovative tools and solutions to the marketplace. I remind you of the social impact bond program. No one had done that for homelessness until the city of Denver stepped up and did it. And now other cities are working to duplicate it. So we're very innovative in our approach. We're not perfect. We still have work to do. But we're going to never stop being in the laboratory to try to make a difference and to bring the diversity of solutions to the market. Yes, ma'am.
Like we know that some people don't want to come to the shelter. They have issues with drugs, alcohol. What are you going to tell those people that say that they don't want to move? Will they have their possessions removed
I think, again, the diversity of solutions to the marketplace. Britta, and I'll invite the other partners if you'd like.
You know, one of the things I like to remind us all is that there's about 50 million American adults that struggle with mental health, and there are about 20 million American adults who struggle with substance misuse. Nearly all are housed. We know that these issues are best addressed from a foundation of housing stability, and that's going to remain our approach. We've been proving it with the social impact bond, and we've been proving it throughout our housing contracts, and we're going to continue replicating. We need a greater scale.
Anyone else like to make a thought to that? Good. Maybe one more question, and we'll send you on. Did we have another one? I thought I saw one over. Was it you, Conrad?
Yeah.
My new friend?
For a long time, my understanding was the cleanups were enforcement of public safety or health laws. You just mentioned the camping ban. Can you tell me which is being enforced with these cleanups?
I think there's a myriad of reasons why we clean up in campus. One is right-of-way enforcement. A public health threat may exist. Safety, as Brad pointed out, with one instance, an example. Some of the things that have happened in some of these unsanctioned campsites are unconscionable. We know we have reported sexual assaults. We have felony assaults that are occurring. So it's a myriad of reasons why we might move in, but typically they fall under right-of-way and public health. Okay? All right, thank you all very much. 12:30 for the roundtable.